Hello everyone, my name is Adnan Qaiser. You must have seen me earlier at YouTube as well because I keep appearing in different capacities. Today, my friends, I wish to talk to you about some salient aspects of CPEC. CPEC, as we all know, is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's a matter of great significance because it is expected to bring a lot of economic prosperity into our country, as well as it highlights the importance of Pakistan's geo-strategic location at the hub of five civilizations. If you just recall your history lessons, you would remember that in the north of Pakistan we have Confucius or Chinese civilization. In our east is the Hindu civilization. In the west we have the Muslim civilization, and in the southwest we have the Iranian or the Persian civilization, as well as we have our own indigenous Indus Valley civilization. So we are situated at a hub of five very historic civilizations. So this CPEC is going to play an important role. But I have noted that there is very little information available on it, and people are very interested, especially the students, are very interested to know as to how and how much this CPEC is going to affect or impact their lives. The people are also curious to know what is the long-term role this CPEC is going to play into the destiny of Pakistan and affect the lives of its people. But unfortunately, for some untold reason, the government has not shared a lot of details about CPEC with us. So all we can learn about CPEC is through media reports, as well as some international studies which have come out. I do not know for what reason the information about CPEC has been kept under closed wraps. But understand that CPEC is a matter of great national importance. So when we discuss or deliberate upon CPEC, we should be extremely careful and cautious because of one thing, that whatever we say or discuss should be authenticated, and whatever is our data or facts, they should be substantiated later on. So when I wrote my research paper on CPEC a few months ago, it generated a lot of interest among people. There was a debate as well. It was published by the Conference of Defense Associations Institute in Canada, as well as the Global Village Space and South Asia Journal in United States. That's why I thought that since everyone cannot have access to that research paper, why not I discuss this issue with you guys at YouTube and learn new things about what CPAC is, or what is its background, and how it's going to impact our lives. What are the concerns? Because as I mentioned, that when I wrote the CPAC paper, I wrote it as a concerned onlooker. So I will be discussing some of its worrisome aspects with you. I must highlight, as I mentioned earlier, I am not against CPAC. People call it a game changer. I call it a fortune changer for the people of Pakistan because it's going to greatly impact our lives. But the way the government has hushed up the things and revealing very little information to us, people, one becomes a little concerned about its long-term implications, both political as well as economic. We must ask questions such as, is this CPAC is going to isolate us from the rest of the world, or especially the Western countries? Would its loan that would eventually be required to be paid back, are they going to be backbreaking our nation? because obviously we are piling up the loans and this debt has to be retired one day. Then we have to ask question, would the terms and conditions of CPEC, are they going to strangulate us, or they are going to subjugate us under a new form of colonization? You know about colonization by Western powers in 18th and 19th century. Subcontinent itself remained a colony. So, and then again, we have to ask another question. What if this is not a modern form of colonization? Um, would it change the complexion of our society and our social system, our religious and moral values? Is it going to lead us to Pakistan's Chinanization? So a new word has been so that's why, I had titled my research paper as China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Is it Pakistan's Chinanization or its colonization? We'll be discussing it later in detail. So feel free to take notes, and rest assured that everything which I am going to say or I have written in the paper has been fully authenticated by media reports as well as international studies. But first, let me clarify that I am not a CPEC expert. I am not an economist. As you know, that sometimes I write on geopolitics, so it's just part of my daily routine that I have compiled all these things and I wanted to share it with you. So in case there are future queries or doubts, please go and search for these for the answers. You are most welcome to send me an email as well, and I'll try to help you out as much as possible. My email address is my full name, that is Adnan Qaiser with a Qaiser, followed by 101 at gmail.com. But mind you, this discussion is going to be fairly long, which I'll be presenting in 30 minutes sessions, because I know that otherwise the lesson becomes pretty lengthy and becomes monotonous and becomes a drag. So if you guys find some value in it, you're most welcome to come back and listen to it. I'm sure it's going to be helpful to you. For your easy understanding, I have broken down this presentation into at least 13 parts. I do not know, as we proceed, we would find out what would be the exact distribution of the sections, segments, and parts. So, considering this talk, which we are presently doing this introductory part as part one, in the second part we'll try to explore as to what exactly is this CPEC. I'll try to give you a background of this project, as well as we'll discuss the significance of CPEC and other related project for China. I have divided part 2 into 7 segments. In segment 1, I will be giving out the composition of the Belt and Road Initiative. The overall project of CPEC comes under a Belt and Road Initiative, which I'll be explaining in due course. In segment 2, I'll explain you the difference between geopolitics and geo-economics. A new term has come up which is called geo-economics, which I think that you guys must be aware of. Third, I will try to tell you as why I feel that this BRI or CPEC is governed by a doctrine or a policy which I call as a doctrine of dominance by debt. So remember these words, a doctrine of dominance by debt, and I will relate my theory to you later on. And that's why I have kept the title of this talk as well as dominance by debt, the geo-strategy of CPEC, because it's very, very, very vast and very, very long and very, very deep-rooted. So in segment 4, we'll discuss China's need for having alternate trade routes. So CPEC is one of them. Segment 5 will cover the significance of Gwadar seaport for China because of its geo-strategic location. I'll explain later on about geopolitics, geostrategy, and geoeconomics. In the sixth segment, we'll try to analyze what benefits or what advantages this CPEC brings to China. And in the last segment, part two's last seventh segment, I'll give you a detailed review of an undeclared war in the Indian Ocean. It's a war for naval dominance in the Indian Ocean, which I think that you guys should be aware of, though, especially those students of international affairs. They should have a picture of this. So in part 3, we'll briefly discuss about China-Pakistan relations in its historic context. Briefly, but just an overview of the relations. We'll try to see which had been the areas of cooperation before this CPEC was introduced in our bilateral relations. In part 4, I'll give you the salient aspects of CPEC master plan. Mind you, as I mentioned, that this CPEC project has been ongoing for the past at least 3 years. Since 2015 it was signed, but we have still not been told about its exact nature and scope. The government's website is pretty sketchy and lacks basic information. So I'll try to give you the outline of a CPEC and what has been agreed bilaterally between China and Pakistan, as had been leaked out in a leading newspaper of Pakistan on 21st of June 2017. So in part 5, we'll learn about the lavish tax concessions, lifetime waivers, and custom duty exemptions which the government of Pakistan has been bestowing to our Chinese investors. I'll tell you how much profits these Chinese companies will be making, and how the government of Pakistan has given its sovereign guarantees to those enterprises by assuming their financial liabilities in case they go into default. So in part 6, I'll briefly discuss about CPEC related special economic zones, or what we call SEZs, and the disadvantages which these SEZs bring to our Pakistani businesses due to our government's policies. Mind you, Pakistani businesses have been unreasonably put in a very difficult competition with the Chinese counterparts because of our free trade agreement, which came into effect between the two countries in July 2007. And mind you that because of these issues, the special economic zones are already being called as China enclaves. So in part 7, I'll touch upon briefly CPEC's early harvest projects, as well as their financial outlay. 8th, we'll discuss the obstacles and challenges to CPEC, and thus we'll be discussing international, regional, as well as domestic impediments which threaten or give challenge to the successful implementation of CPEC project. In part 9, I'll give you a passing reference to CPEC's proposed oil pipeline and its planned tourist cities. You might be shocked to learn what types of coastal tourism and nightlife CPEC plans to introduce in our Islamic Republic, and what cultural and religious frictions it can create in our society, considering our conservative outlook and our religious and moral beliefs and values. So in part 10, I will briefly see what is the criticism against CPEC both in international media as well as in our domestic newspapers. I'll give you just one or two examples. In part 11, I plan to share my apprehensions with you about CPEC's joint security and patrolling by the two armies of the two countries. This issue is still not confirmed, I must tell you, but there have been a few reports, media reports as well as other reports, about its scope, and there are apprehensions that one day this Gwadar deep sea port is going to become a full-fledged naval base for China. We'll be discussing it in due course, and there is again talk that this 2,395 kilometer long China-Pakistan economic corridor maybe at one stage will be patrolled by the two armies of the two countries to safeguard it from terrorism and regional mischief. Those students who are aware of our neighborhood, they can understand what challenges Pakistan is facing from both east as well as from western flank. I hope you guys can understand the significance of having foreign boots on the ground. It carries a long-term geopolitical implications and long-term repercussions as well because of this policy. So in part 12, I plan to highlight China's own outlook about itself as a middle kingdom, as China has been calling itself historically. China believes that it has been situated in the middle of the world. So that is why it calls itself Shangri-La. So Shangri-La means heaven on earth. So those of you who are very fond of watching Jackie Chan's movies, I'm sure they're more aware of it. Anyway, we'll learn China's views and notions about its future as a rising regional and global power, and to what extent it can go to achieve its ambitions. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I will conclude with CPEC-related future concerns for Pakistan. With this, I come to an end with this introduction part. I will come back to you with part 2 subsequently with the background of the CPEC. Those of you who are interested, please stay tuned. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Adnan Qaiser with the introduction of CPEC. We'll see you again.